Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Power Bar Story. It could be good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from, but it is 11 a.m. on the West Coast. So this morning, today, we are very pleased to have with us Dr. Michael Sprague. We were talking before we hit record here, and one of the folks that is listening in had mentioned that they follow Michael on LinkedIn. Well, that's where I came to know Michael from seeing him post on LinkedIn. He always has uplifting and inspirational messages, and it didn't take long to, want to follow him and realize, wow, he would be a great gentleman to bring onto the program to hear about him and what he's doing in our world. With that, Michael, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Scott, and everyone.
Amen to that. Well, what I'm going to do, Michael, is I'm going to start by reading your bio. And then once we get that out of the way, we're going to jump right into the interview and we'll see where things lead. So, with that, Dr. Michael Sprague is the Louisiana State Chaplain with the Capital Commission and president of Grace Adventures. Michael is engaged in relational outreach and discipleship, teaching, coaching, writing, and speaking. He serves as a non political friend to people in the halls of leadership. He loves to help people get to know the Jesus of the scriptures. Michael holds a business degree from the University of Maryland, a Master's of Divinity degree from Capital Bible Seminary, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from Dallas Theological Seminary. He served as a senior pastor of Trinity Church in Covington, Louisiana for 11 years and formerly served for 15 years at Forsey Bible Church in Silver Spring, Maryland. Michael has been featured on such programs as Fox and Friends, Fox Business Risk and Reward, Moody Radio, and Christianity Today. In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, he helped launch the Touch Global Crisis Response Ministry for the EFCA that is now multiplying compassion ministry around the world. Michael does life with his wonderful wife, Donna, and resides in Mandeville, Louisiana. Michael has traveled to the biblical lands of Israel, Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, and Greece, and leads an annual trip. That really sounds exciting. His motto is bet the farm on God. Michael has written a book entitled Disaster, Betting the Farm on God in Life's Storm. So with that, again, welcome aboard, Michael.
Good to be here.
All right. So we were chatting again in the pre-game, behind the scenes before we. Let me see here. Something just happened to my screen. Okay, I'm good. And so what we're going to do today is I have a series of questions. It's a little different than what Fridays are usually done. Usually we just let the person just tell their story. But I did have a couple questions that I wanted to ask Michael, and I think we'll get his story out, from some of these questions. So, Michael, what I want to do is I want to go back in time, right? So we'll jump in the time capsule and we'll go back to where you grew up as a kid. If you can just tell us where that was.
Well, I grew up in Laurel, Maryland, went to school on Fort Meade. My dad did his career with the National Security Agency, so he was kind of in the intelligence field. If he told me what he did, he'd have to kill me. And it was just a nice, middle class growing up kind of life. But I was around the military, all my growing up days. And then a little bit later, I was in the backyard of Walter Reed and Bethesda Naval. And
Oh,
so
wow.
been around a lot of military people. And it just was, it was something special growing up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Maryland is a beautiful place. There's a lot of different, aspects to Maryland for sure. So, as a kid, as a child, what did you enjoy doing?
Well, that was playing sports and playing basketball. I mean, that was the center of my life. I loved it. Couldn't get enough of it. Just lived it from morning till night, and loved hanging out with friends. But sports was kind of the center of my world.
Right. Yeah. I actually grew up a little bit south of Maryland in Virginia. I was in the southeast Tidewater area, Virginia Beach, specifically. And same thing. I played football and I pole vaulted in track. I played baseball, when I was younger, but football kind of went out. And, being there on the water in the bay, did a lot of fishing. I did a lot of hunting, did a lot of water skiing. So yeah, great place. That area of the U.S. is a really great place to live and grow up. So, let me ask you this. So as a kid, we all at some point thought about, what do I want to do when I grow up? What were some of the things that were going through your mind? What were the things that you thought you wanted to do, or did they align with what you eventually wind up doing?
Oh no, all I could think about was playing sports. I wanted to be in the NBA. I have a great appreciation for my dad. Not many people get to play in the NBA, and my dad knew I wasn't going to be one of them early on. And so when I was in eighth grade, I was kind of at that point in life, maybe some of you can identify, where you could kind of take two paths. You could kind of get in the wrong path, or you could kind of stay on the right path. And I was kind of leaning toward the wrong path, and it caused my grades to really go down. My dad came to me and he said, if you don't bring your grades up this next semester, you're going to quit basketball, the biggest thing in my life, and you're going to stay in the house for an entire semester.
Ooh.
And I kind of blew that off. I mean, what good dad would ever make you quit playing basketball? And when my grades were still suffering, he said, call your coach and tell him you're quitting. And I want you to stay in the house for an entire semester. And I did. During that semester, I couldn't stand what my dad did. But over the course of that semester, I kind of learned how to study. In that next marking period, I had almost straight A's. And then those going forward through high school, I had almost straight A's. And I look back and I see I wasn't going to be in the NBA, but my dad knew I had some potential in some other areas. And he took the tough love kind of approach. And, I'll be forever grateful, even though I couldn't understand that at the time.
Yeah, amen. Isn't that life? So many times when we're going through challenges and struggles in life, we can only see what's exactly in front of us and trying to understand where we're going, why we're going through it. Uh, you know, God has a plan. We don't necessarily know it in detail. Sometimes we do, but a lot of times we find out later in life when things start to fall in line that God was there the whole time. And having a dad like that, Michael, is incredible. Dads matter in our society uh, nowadays. I think men are struggling with that bit of identity, and it's a tragedy because dads, again, they matter. I grew up without a dad, but I had a very strong grandfather
Mm.
who was a Marine, but he was a very gentle man. He was all business, but he just had this way about him, right? So yeah, I was blessed with that as well. My grades weren't the best because I love my friends and I loved sports and yeah, so that struggle was real with me too. And I thought I was going to go off and pole vault in college, and that didn't happen because my grades suffered, and it was my fault. I didn't focus on it, so I own that. But so well, let me ask you a personal question because and this is kind of aligned to why I connected with you on LinkedIn and why I follow you. Uh, when did you become a Christian? I know that faith is a major aspect in your life.
Yeah, when I was in my late teen years, I had uh, I had good parents. I had lots of friends. I always had a few dollars in my pocket. Uh, but I came to the point where it seemed like something was missing. that there was just something in my life that I was missing out on. And there's this God-shaped, the saying, there's a God-shaped vacuum in the heart of every person. You can try to fill it with friends and pleasure and sports or whatever, money. But it's the God-shaped vacuum. And those things, they can be good things, but they won't provide the fulfillment and the purpose that is really potentially there for you. I kind of learned that experientially. I was living it, that there was a hole in my heart, even though I had much. And so I had gone to church. My parents either took me there or made me go to church. I learned the stories. I knew about God, but I sure didn't know God. And on a Palm Sunday in my late teens, a teacher who'd known me most of my life and who was praying for me, as I shot out the back door to get onto that basketball court, she caught me by the arm and she said, these words that I'll never forget. Michael, I'd hate to get to heaven and not see you there. Well, you wouldn't just go up to anybody on the street and grab them and say those words to them. But for me, kind of a young adult that was totally centered on himself, it was the strategic words that I believe were needed to jolt me into thinking and pondering, what is that hole in my heart? I thought about it all week long. And I concluded I knew about God, but I'd always had God just as a 911. And so there was one verse I knew in the Bible. I didn't know any other verses, but John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth on him will not perish but have everlasting life. And it was just words before, but it suddenly came alive that week that God didn't just love the globe, he loved me. And he gave his Son for me. And that next Sunday was Easter Sunday morning. And I made a strategic decision in my life to not bet on Michael anymore, but to put my trust, my future, my eternity, my destiny in the person of Jesus Christ. It turned out to be the best decision of my entire life. It really changed the trajectory of my life. It wasn't that my problems were suddenly gone, but it's just that I sensed that I had a connection to God that I never had before. He became so very important to me. And little by little, I just had a hunger and a thirst to get to know him in a deeper way. But that decision in my late teen years ended up being the best decision I've ever made.
Amen to that. You know, that's a great story, and it reminds me. We talk about men are important, in lives, husbands, but teachers as well are incredible role models. And for her to pull you aside like that, obviously, we talk. God has a plan, right? And that was absolutely part of his plan, was for her to step up and say, "Hey, buddy, this is important, right? Pay attention." And uh, it's incredible that she had the will, and God put that on her heart, because look who you've become. Right? That's something that I love in talking with people, especially on issues like God, because you never know what's going to happen in life. And if you can touch one person. If you just touch that one person, they can become, a Dr. Michael Sprague, right? or, or
I'm
or
just,
something else.
I'm nothing special, just simple old Michael. But, I, I came to find out that God had a purpose for my life. I never quite knew what that was about before. And everything changed. And it's still working its way out. And so every day is something I can learn, I can grow, I can change. And it's an adventure every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see that in your being, Michael. It radiates from you, and that's awesome. So let me ask you this. You know, being the kind of guy that you are, you're successful, you're a very busy man, you've got a lot going on. How do you start your mornings? Is there anything in particular that you do that, that's, maybe a ritual for you and you're busy and how do you manage your day?
Well, there is. I've always loved to kind of get about the day, but I can tell you for the good chunk of my life, before I got out of bed, I'd kind of have this thought, Jesus, I'm going to be very busy today. And would you bless my day? And would you not give me any problems today? And I'm a little bit facetious there, but basically, for several decades, that was virtually what I said before I got out of bed and my feet hit the floor. I'm going to be very busy today. Bless me. About 10, 12 years ago, I kind of was thinking that all through and thought I had gotten it all wrong. And so for the last decade plus, I'd say 75% of the mornings, including this morning, before I get out of bed, I say these words: Jesus, you are going to be very busy today. Would it be okay if I journey with you? And I feel like my life isn't so much about me making it up, it's me discerning what God's doing and jump into the middle of what he's doing. It takes a lot of the pressure off of life. It isn't about me primarily, it's about him. And I found out, Scott, this might seem way out there, but I found out he can make up my life better than I can. And so
Imagine that, right?
it gives me kind of a rest and a trust and a peace that it isn't first and foremost all about me. It's about him, and yet he cares for me, and he lets me join him in his work, those bigger purposes. And so I'm a grateful person because that's an incredible, incredible invitation every day where he just kind of says to me, but not just me, everybody, come and see, follow me, um, join me. And that's a long answer, but to your question, it's kind of a built-in habit that I have that kind of a conversation almost every morning.
Right. And I like how you in in communion with God, right? You realize that, man, flipping the script is important, right? That makes a huge difference when we're receptive to exactly that.
Jesus said once, if you save your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life for my sake, you'll end up finding life. And that seems to be so upside down. It would seem to be if I'm all about me, I'm actually going to get all those things I want. But it actually is when you're not first and foremost all about yourself and you're about God and others, you actually in time find the things that you were yearning for all along. And that doesn't mean that it's a life problem free. There might be more problems in your life. But those inner things like joy and peace and, goodness, those are the things that I think are the things that really make for life. And it's upside down, or maybe it's the right side up way to live.
Yeah, I think the latter is absolutely right. And I know for me, personally, I start my mornings now. I like it quiet. I get up early and, I want to go commune with God. And whether that's going outside in the morning, where I live is it's beautiful here. And just that connection with nature, and seeing all the wonderful things that God has created for us here. It's just such a connection. And of course, I'll read a little bit of the Bible in the morning too, uh, and I'm in prayer. And I found that the days where I don't do that, my day just doesn't start off right, and then it dawns on me, well, hey, knucklehead, that's because you didn't start your day the way you should have, right? So, you kind of create your own problems sometimes when you get busy. But, I know God understands that things happen here too, right? But I have found for me that when I start my days that way, my days tend to go better, and I feel more focused on what it is I'm to do that day. So, well, let's shift gears here a little bit. Now, I think I know the answer to this question, but what brought you into your line of work that you're in now? I mean, I know you spent time as a pastor at two different churches, but in terms of what you're doing today, over the past few years, what brought you into that line of work?
Yeah, I served 26 years in kind of the traditional role of pastor, senior pastor in a local flock congregation. I went through Hurricane Katrina and I was at ground zero for, I would never have expected to be in the greatest natural disaster in American history, but it was crazy. People were living and dying, and it was absolutely like a nuclear bomb went off all around me. And that was life shaping. But then 5 years later, I had 13 people come to me independent of each other and say, Michael, nobody works with the top leaders of the state of Louisiana. It is a mission field, and most people just throw stones at elected leaders. And, they're human beings too. Would you work full time on that mission field and reach out to the top leaders in the state? I'm kind of like, I'm a pastor. I preach, I shepherd people, I love people. I don't even know what you're talking about. But they kept coming to me. And as I kind of investigated that, I came to realize that that was a mission field. Elected leaders are human beings too. I know some of you don't believe that, but I found that they're no different than anybody else. And in fact, most top leaders are lonely. Often they don't have anybody in their life that they can just be truly themselves with. And so I decided I'd give it a whirl. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I would start a 501c3 nonprofit and reach out to elected leaders. And I just found it was wide open. And my desire has been to be one of the 10 people in their life that doesn't want anything from them. I don't want money, don't want favors, don't want votes, don't have an agenda, not going to be a pain in their backside. But if I could serve as a friend, as an encouragement, as an accountability kind of person, support, the healthier they are, the better they might serve. And now entering my 15th year, I know virtually every leader in the state, the senators, the reps, are people in Washington, D.C. And it's just been a privilege to do that. And you won't believe this either, but I've met some of the finest people I've met in life who serve in public service at that level. Now, there's a few characters. Yes, there are. But I found there's some of the best people also that serve in leadership in government. And I'm unhesitant in saying that to people. There are good people who serve in government. And yes, there are some characters.
Absolutely. And yeah, real quick, I noticed that one of the folks that has joined us live here today, Bruce, what we're going to do is we're going to hold questions for the very end. So once we're done interviewing, then we'll give folks an opportunity for Q&A with Michael. But thanks for raising your hand there. Yeah, Michael, to your point, there are good people that serve, and I believe that a lot of folks that serve do so because they want to make a difference, right? Their heart's in the right place. Some of them get up there and kind of become enamored with themselves, maybe, or just with, the things that come with office, and they, start to lose focus. Not everybody, but, the point that you made about how these people in leadership positions uh, become lonely, because at some point it's like, well, who can I trust, right? Because everyone wants something from them. Not everybody, but a lot. And I know as a Marine officer, the more senior you get, you do become a little more isolated because, that it's a pyramid and there's a lot less of you at that rank as you go up and you're in organizations where you're leading. And so, there's not this group of guys you're going to be chatting with all the time, and you're busy. So, having someone to come alongside you like that, especially in what you're doing, that's incredible. And so your goal with that is to be a friend, right? A non partisan friend. And what are some of the things that you focus on with these folks? Is it just determining what they need? How do you do that?
Well, I kind of meet people where they're at. I don't care whether they're Republican, Democrat, Independent. I don't care whether they're the all-star at the time or whether they're in the doghouse. I've walked with two politicians who went to prison, and I walk with them through their prison experience. It doesn't matter to me. Jesus, when he met someone, who the most important person who was to Jesus? It was always who was in front of him at the moment. And that's what I try to do is have a ministry of presence. I'm there with them. And, I'm there to listen. I'm there to encourage. I'm there to walk with them. I want what's best for them, their family. We have a weekly Bible study with the legislators, and there's a good number who attend. We always take a case study from the Bible and take a look at it that it might better equip them and train them for their service. So we've hit topics like how to handle conflict, how to be careful with pride, how to use our tongue or not use our tongue. We've talked about how to be an influence, how to become a Christian statesman or a woman. We take practical areas, what true servant leadership is, how to carry out the values that are the values that, as the framers of our country said, America was going to be a unique country because it was built upon this thing called liberty. But liberty was built upon two twin pillars, virtue and faith. Faith would often fuel the virtue. And every single one of the founders said, if you ever just become a people without virtue and faith, you in time will lose your liberty. And it was a great call to recognize that rights come not from a king or a dictator or a strong man or a military leader, that our rights come from God, rights to religion, speech, assembly, the press. And it was an amazing thing that caught on like wildfire that human beings have rights. And if you have a king, he can kind of take them away or give you a few. But if they come from above, they can't. We take a look at those foundational things because every one of our founders said virtue and faith is essential to being a country that maintains its liberty. And so, we'll look at how do they handle government in the scripture and what's the correct role of government. Very practical topics that will serve them well at their level of service. And the people in the room are people at their level of leadership. And what's said in the room stays in the room. And we ask every person that comes to the Bible study, would you leave your politics and your denomination at the door? We're going to come together around the person of Jesus and the Word of God and just see if he might inform our lives. And anybody can say whatever they want to say, but together, I think it shapes all of us. and we learn not only from the eternal truths, but we learn from each other. It's one of my favorite parts of every week.
Yeah, I bet that's a phenomenal way of doing it. That bringing folks together like that, and it's important to leave some of those more worldly things to the side, right? You want to come together for the right reasons, and uh, the things you were saying about the foundational truths of our country. How it began. What were the important things foundationally, and it's interesting how we've kind of lost that bit of history over time, right? I think that's hugely significant that needs to become part of what people, what kids and what young people are learning and understanding, because that's going to help them develop into hopefully being better citizens, better informed citizens, and folks that hopefully make better choices, right? It's very important. Can I ask you, can you share like a good news story of your time advocating and doing what you're doing with these? You're the friend of these folks. Is there any one particular story that's a great good news story you want to share?
Let me just share two quick ones. I had one guy, he's at the highest level of government. He gets governors elected, he gets senators elected. And I was telling him about how, on a rotating basis, I go out to a place that helps people put their lives back together. In some cases, it's people off the street. In some cases, it's professionals who've lost their way. But this guy was always asking me questions about this 1 year program. And he calls me up one day and he says, Michael, I've got to get into that 1 year program or else I'll be dead by the end of the day. He was just thinking about what if life was worth living. I mean, this is a guy, very professional. Everybody who somebody knows him. And I got him connected to that 1 year program that day, and he sold everything he had. And he stepped out of kind of life in the political realm, and he stepped into that 1 year program. I loved him when he was going through his problems, but after the year, as he put it, I can't just go to a counseling appointment once a week. I need an entire interior reworking. And after that year was over, I loved him even more because he was just, he'd grown and he'd changed, and he went back to then doing what he did before. And he was very open of kind of telling that story of how somebody had all the props and security blankets kicked out from under their life. And you're left with, who am I? And what's life all about? And can I even make it to the next day? And he's helping other people now. That's a story I just love. There's another story because my heart is if ever you could have faith leaders, business leaders, and government leaders come together in trust-filled relationships, anything's possible. If you don't have trust, it's hard or nothing is possible. And so one time they were trying to get something through, and for years, people would balk at it and say, I'm not working with you, and I'm not working with you. I had the leaders, the key leaders in the state, in my Bible study. They came together and they set up a program where anybody could take their illegal drugs to the police station. They wouldn't be arrested. And the police officer would ask them, do you want to get into a 1 year program where all of your food and your lodging and your medical will be provided to overcome your challenge? And if they said yes, they drive them right there and then to that 1 year program. All of those leaders were in the small group together, and they came together in trust-filled relationships, and they accomplished what for years people couldn't, who just wouldn't work together. That's what I love, when people can work together and do something to love your neighbor. It just thrills me.
Yeah, absolutely. And the trust is essential in doing that, right? As we connect with people, as we build relationships, they have to be, if they're good relationships, then they are absolutely based on trust. And then that opens the door to good works like what you were doing uh in that scenario. And then the other story that you shared, we're all people. You know,
Hmm.
everyone has challenges, everyone has struggles. They may look really polished, and can be, but we don't know what's happening inside their hearts, what's going on behind the scenes, the struggles that they may have. And it's amazing that that gentleman went all in,
Hmm.
that, through your counsel, and I'm sure God had much to do with that, right? That he realized, wow, I've got to go all in, and to do that, to get rid of all the things you have, to sell the things that he did, to devote his time in that year. And then what did he do? He could have just walked off after that year, but he came back and was a better person doing what he's doing. And the part I really love, Michael, is that you shared, now he's helping people,
Hmm.
right? That is
Hmm.
huge. Once we go through challenges and we get through it, why wouldn't we want to turn around and help others? And
Hmm.
not necessarily be the person that does everything for them, but you put the hand out and you help bring them up to that next level. That is so important. And I think, that's a very important thing when you look at Christianity. What does God want us doing, right? He wants us out there on the front lines, engaging with people, and that's absolutely an incredible way to do it. And
It's humbling, but
yes,
I found in my life, at the senator level, representative level, really anybody in life, they could basically care less what little measures of success I've had in life. But if you tell them your story about when you went through betrayal, when it seemed like you were at loss for everything, when you had something that was broken, when you hit that wall that everything seemed impossible. I mean, they are all ears. I mean, they want a journey and they want to hear that. And they want to just know I'm not alone. It's not just me. And, sometimes you can think, well, if you told your real story, would anybody even want to be around you? But I've found that usually that actually knits people together when people tell their story to each other appropriately at the right time, at the right length. But I find that it's out of my brokenness and what I learned in the middle of that. Often that's the tools that life has given me to help someone else, even those in the halls of leadership.
yeah, absolutely. The power of our story, right? That's the naming convention for what it is we're doing here with this group. And that is powerful, right? Because when people get to hear the truth, right, of who you are, the struggles that you've gone through, the failures that you've had, that really that gets people's attention, and they say, "Oh my gosh, someone that you perceive as being, so squared away, wow, they've had struggles, and they even have struggles today, and they want to share it, and they want to, talk about it because they want to help others." And I think that's phenomenal. And uh, so let me do this. Let me kind of shift gears again. And I want to ask you a little bit about your global outreach, the ministry that you have here. I'm assuming you kind of already talked to it, that after Katrina, was that the catalyst for moving in that direction? Is that how that worked? And
Well, yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, 5 more years took place after Katrina. So we were helping people rebuild their lives, rebuild their homes. So the transition kind of took place 5 years after Hurricane Katrina. But we had 30 30,000 volunteers sleep on the floor of our worship service center, 100 to 300 a week for the first 4 years after Katrina. It was a volunteer revolution from people all over the country and Canada. And,
Wow.
we were just amazed at that. So, I was able to put those volunteers at the disposal of people in the community for free. I put them at the disposal of mayors and police chiefs, and we were just going out every day just to help people. And I never knew kind of the goodwill that kind of built up and the connections that I would have. But it's just like John chapter 5 says, the Father's always working and Jesus is always working. I didn't know it, but it was like he was preparing me for something and he was going to then connect the dots, of which I didn't have a clue. I would never have known this kind of thing even existed, and it didn't. I had to make it up as a new nonprofit. But when I got a little taste of it, uh, I wanted to write a book about that volunteer revolution that took place after Katrina. And I felt like the media didn't give an adequate acknowledgement of what people and the people of God did. It wasn't the government that, by and large, bailed out the people in our arena. It was a volunteer revolution that took place where people just out of the goodness of their heart came and helped people pick up their life and put it back together again. And so I wanted to write a book on that and did. But I was kind of open hands at that point. What's next? And these people came to me and just said, there's something I think you could do in the state. And it came out of nowhere. But after a while, it just resonated with me. And as I took steps in that direction, I have a great love for people that are leaders, because so many people throw rocks at them. So many people just write the nastiest things on social media. Their spouses and kids often, they've got the scars too. And I'm not apologizing for that. They signed up for that. But I do have a heart that the healthier they are, the better they'll serve. And so that started with me going to Baton Rouge, and when they're in session, I'm in session with them. I lead the Bible study. Now I help put on the governor's prayer breakfast. I'm on the national prayer breakfast team in Washington, D.C. We just had 140 countries there 2 weeks ago, almost all 50 states there. And it's just something special once a year to be part of that. We just brought on our first chaplain in the capital of Zambia in Africa, and hope to bring on 7 other capitals in Africa in the next year or two. And so it's just exciting to have a little touch both locally and in our state, and then a little bit nationally, and then we're just starting internationally.
Right. And Sue, to your point about internationally, that global aspect. So what part of the world are you guys touching right now with what you're doing?
Well, we just launched about a year ago in Zambia. We
Mhm.
kind of did an initiative at the United Nations, and then we went over to Geneva, Switzerland, where they have a United Nations World Court, I believe, is there. And we met with a lot of different leaders. And God kind of led us to Africa to get started in that. And so that's launched so well. And there's so many opportunities there, because it's the same thing probably in most countries. There is just a loneliness in leadership. It's challenging to be in leadership these days. In fact, one of my good friends, Doug Burley, he worked with high school students for years as president of Young Life, if any of you have heard that high school ministry. But on his own dime, for the last 60 years, he's gone to Ukraine and Russia. 60 years. In fact, he just went to the the Moscow prayer breakfast. There was 500 people in attendance. Some of Putin's lieutenants were there. And he went and he just shared with them, because he was the only American there. He was the keynote speaker. He shared with them, if we as people don't get the vertical relationship more in the right place, it's impossible to have the horizontal relationships in the home, marriages, neighbors, states, countries. It's just impossible to navigate those kind of relationships if you don't have more of the vertical relationship right. And here's the people in Moscow hearing that. It's the message that I believe we need in our country as well. Is there is a love for God and love for our neighbor that's most important. And if you have that, all things become possible. And we've seen it around the world as we've interacted with people around the world. When you have that commonality, often there is potential to break through the hostility that exists in different places. And we have seen that work over and over. It was exciting just a couple of years ago to have a leader in an African nation up in the house that the ministry has in Northern Virginia overlooking the Potomac. And that leader who had been growing in a Bible study was there, and he said, if my political opponent were here today, I would make peace with him. And my friend there, Doug, said, would you excuse me for just a moment? And he had his political opponent upstairs, and he brought him down, and they made peace with each other, and the State Department had been trying to accomplish that for decades.
Wow.
And, it doesn't always happen just like that. But so often, if a heart gets more tender and open to reconciliation and believes that all things are possible, sometimes you get to see it with your eyes that the impossible becomes possible. And so whether it's in a marriage or in a parenting situation or in a community or a church or in government, whatever it is, I love to see people come together and have peace-filled relationships and more experience the life that's intended for them rather than just the brokenness that's real, but it doesn't have to be the absolute dominating issue in people's lives.
That is so true. That's a fantastic story. I knew where you were going with that. That's just, about that other gentleman being there and bringing them together. That's incredible. And you mentioned Young Life, and that brings back memories for me. I was in Young Life in high school, and my senior year in particular, I absolutely think that helped keep me in the right lane. If it wasn't for the young folks, the 20 some year old guys and gals that were involved in the program, and then the lead gentleman in our area, and just all the young guys and gals that were part of Young Life, the high school kids that we were with. Such good memories there, and that was an important part of my life. I support what Young Life does because they have a great mission. And well, I appreciate you, sharing how you're working globally, and you mentioned the vertical and the horizontal relationships, right? When you look at the Ten Commandments, it's right there. The first four are that vertical, right? And then the other six are how we should be getting along with our neighbors, right? So we have that connection with how we interface with God, and then how He wants us to do that with our neighbors. And it sounds like, you guys are absolutely, doing that here and abroad. And I think that's fantastic. God has absolutely blessed you and everyone that's been coming into contact with the work that you and your folks are doing. So to that end, Michael, I want to ask you, um, what are your future plans when you look at this year, 2025, and maybe out, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. What is Michael Sprague going to be doing? And uh, I know God's leading you with that, but I'm just curious to hear what your thoughts are there.
Well, I used to be quite a planner, and maybe you needed to do that when you were heading up organizations and disaster response works and that kind of thing. But I probably put too much emphasis on my planning, or at least left God out of my planning. And sometimes it was Michael's plan that was being written. I have kind of simplified my life so that I'm not looking to put a big organization together. It's just me. And I'm partnering with a lot of people doing a lot of great things. And as an encourager, as a partner, as a coach, but I'm not wanting to have a huge structure around me so that I can devote 95% of my time to the relational calling that I have. And so, my life right now is basically reduced down to something very simple, Scott. I want to spend the rest of my life introducing people to the person of Jesus and help them to get into the Word of God that will just encourage and shape their life and give them great wisdom. And then I want to pour into my 2 grandkids. I got nothing else in life that's really that important to me. It's just those 2 things. And
Mhm.
so, I'm at that stage of life where I never want to retire. You don't retire from a calling. You might retire from a job, but I'm not going to retire from a calling as long as I have breath. I want to serve. I want to go out with my boots on. And I might not be able to do all the things that I'm doing right now, but God's given me lots of energy and I can do lots of things right now. And I want to stay focused on that. Moving to Florida and riding a 3-wheeled bicycle is just not my idea of living. Maybe for a few minutes playing basketball still, but, I've got to focus and it's my purpose. My favorite verse is John 15:5. I'm the vine, you're the branches. If you abide in me, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. I have just found that if I pay attention to the abiding and connecting, God's making up my life with more opportunities than I could ever make up myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to just stay focused there and let God take care of what impact I might have. In fact, outcomes are up to Him anyways. I just need to be faithful today. So I'm not in the place that maybe some of you are, or people who are in some larger organizations might be. I don't have to do lots of planning. I just need to stay focused on what He's called me to do today and tomorrow. And I'm getting more opportunities. Look at this. I'm on with Scott and Sarah and Rich and Les and Jana and Bruce and Brenda and Catherine and Jill today. I mean, who could ever made that up? And it's just my joy, everybody, to meet you and now to know you.
Joy indeed, Michael. What you just said is, you're walking in faith, right? And that's incredible. And I think that's something I learn every day is to remember to walk in faith first. And then, things tend to work themselves out, especially when you're connected like that. Something you talk to again is relationships, 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 relationships. When I was at Command and Staff College as a Marine, we had people coming in, general officers, flag officers from the services come in, commanders come in. You have people of industry, folks that are CEOs. You have Supreme Court justices coming in. And I mean, I was there for a year as a student. It's a great place to be. You learn a lot. But the overarching theme with these folks coming in and talking to you was relationships,
Mm,
building relationships. That's how you get things done. You said that guy or gal sitting next to you, 5 years from now, you might be in some crazy place in the world, and one of these guys or gals is going to be there, and you're going to know them from your time here. You'll have already had that relationship built. and the trust factor that you talk to. Those things are so fundamental and key to being successful in life with other people. And all the faith aspects that come with that uh, are phenomenal. So, Michael, I want to go ahead and end here, and I want to thank you again for your time today. You are an inspiration. I've been looking at your work on LinkedIn for a number of years now, and it was a pleasure to have you here to share your story and to remind us of the important things in life. So, thank you.
You're welcome.